So we track why people sell, right? Is it because of burnout? Is it because of a health issue? Is it because it was the strategic plan, right? And the data shows us that 95% is not because of a strategic plan. It's because of a personal life event, burnout, health, spouse gets an opportunity. The business owner decides they don't like the business. I saw a great quote today on Instagram, and it was like, courage isn't, about sticking it out. It's about being able to walk in a door and recognize that you're in the wrong room.
Welcome to Spaghetti on the Wall, where we throw ideas, see what sticks, and nurture those that do. I'm your host, Armando, an actor, entrepreneur, and coach, giving you insights that light up your world. We're here to explore the realms of business, marketing, and life, serving up a shot of inspiration with every episode. Ready to make ideas stick and grow them into something great? Let's dive in. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on when you are consuming this podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, Spaghetti on the Wall back with another one. Jessica Fialkovich, how are you?
I'm so good, Armando. How are you?
I'm great. I am glad that you are here. We got a chance to meet at this event called the Exit Planning Institute, and this is where I kind of got introduced to this whole new world, right? So it's kind of crazy. I mean, obviously it makes sense, but it's alarming how many businesses are sort of on the exit route, right? All of these, baby boomers now starting to retire, so much so that it created this entire industry. And so I think it's just a really good time. As you know, we have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to this show, and so want to always start talking about exit strategy. I think that is super important for people to be thinking about at the beginning of this, stages of when they're in business, but also on the back end, right? So that they're able to sell it for the amount that they want. So, Jessica, give us the backstory. How did you get involved in all of this? And,
Yeah, I'm happy to. So if we go way back, I actually come from a long line of entrepreneurs. So every generation on my dad's side, except for my dad, was an entrepreneur. So my grandfather was in the pharmacy business. My great-grandfather was in liquor. And then my great-great-grandfather was actually a bootlegger. So I joke like my family has a long line in drugs and alcohol, right? But one of the reasons my dad did not continue the entrepreneurship journey is because my grandfather had a chain of pharmacies that he didn't have an exit strategy or succession plan for. And when the time came for him to retire and get out of the business, there was nothing to do with it. So he ended up shutting the business down. And that long line of entrepreneurship, which should have been wealth generating for our family, right? Actually went the opposite way. So that's kind of the beginning of my story. But I did start my first business when I was 24, with my dad being in shock because he did not want me to go into entrepreneurship. I also went into the alcohol business. So I started in luxury wine. I told you it's in our blood, and built that business, grew it, and sold it in about 3.5 years. And that was my, it was my intro to exits. Although I made a lot of mistakes, right? So going through that process personally really got me interested in this entire exit strategy market. I've spent the last 12 years really more on the M&A and the brokerage side. So I've overseen like 1,200 transactions across all size businesses and industries. But in the last 6 years, I've really been focused on this concept of value growth and working with business owners for 1 to 5 years in advance of their exit to come up with a plan, to come up with a strategy, and then ultimately increase their value so they can achieve their wealth goals for their family.
That's amazing. And so you sold your business. How did you get into this specifically in terms of like M&A, and was it somebody that you were working with, or like how did you fall into this?
Yeah, so we sold our business. I say we, my husband and I did it together. We sold our business through an M&A advisor, and I do give him credit. Like, he brought us a full price buyer. The deal was closed in 60 days, which I now know is like never happens, right? but there wasn't a lot of support through the transaction. And, for lack of a better word, he was like kind of like a sleazy car salesman guy, right? So it was that entrepreneurial spark of like, well, this guy just got, a six-figure check for selling my business. I can do this a little bit better, right? And serve my clients better. And so that's how I was introduced to it. And then it took about a year off to investigate different options, and ended up being connected with a large business brokerage firm named Transworld Business Advisors, who I partnered with back in 2013.
Very cool. And so was it like a fish to water? Did it just really make sense to you? And
The concept makes sense, but like, look, like every business, when you start it, it's hard, right? So I tell everybody, whether you're going to M&A or exit strategy, like the first year in this business will be the hardest thing you've ever done. And the second year will be the second hardest thing you've ever done. And I think that's true really for building any business, right? But I really felt like this is really I want to say my calling, right? Because I feel like when we attach like something like a calling or a life purpose to work, sometimes work will fall short of it. But I do think this really serves my unique ability and my unique perspective coming from my family background, all through my personal history. So I knew about like 2 years in, like, this is it for me. I'm not going into anything else. I'm going to take my serial entrepreneur hat off and just focus all in on this industry.
that's amazing. So kind of give me for lack of a better word, the customer journey of bringing someone from wanting to sell their business to analyzing where they are. What is that? EBITDA? What, the value of their business. And then like taking them on the journey from, where they are to where they want to be.
Right. So I think it usually starts with the business owner wondering, just like, what is my business worth? Like the owner just thinking late at night, like, what if I want to do something else? Like, what could I sell this for? What are my options? Right. So typically, if you start there, I recommend the best first step is to have an analysis done of the business. And in my firm, Exit Factor, we call it an exit assessment. So it looks not just at the business valuation, which a lot of business owners will go just right to a business valuation. That gives you one piece of data, right? That gives you the piece of data is like, what is it worth today, right? But something more in depth, like an exit assessment, will also help you set some goals for the future, and it'll give you a roadmap and benchmarks of what you have to do in order to hit your exit goal. So instead of just saying like, hey, the business is worth $1 million today, well, what if you want to sell for 5 million? Then it kind of gives you the steps you need to take. I find like that is such an important first step because it's eye-opening for a lot of business owners. And really from there is where you start to build the custom strategy for every business owner. We just did one for a client, and his goal to sell was like $2.5 million. And the assessment came back and it was worth 3.9. So he's like, great news, super happy, put it on the market, let's go. Right. But then we had another owner the other day, and they came in, they're younger, actually, they're in like their late 20s, early 30s in technology, and theirs came in at 5 million, and they have a goal to get to 20 million, right? So that plan showed a roadmap of, about a 5-year plan of what they have to do to get there. And then it's like customized for each business owner. But then that report, like, it just shows you action items. But I think more than anything else, it just gives the business owner clarity. And then they can decide, am I in this? And am I going to invest time and energy to build and grow this to my goals? Or am I good with where it's at now? And I want to pursue the exit event today.
Do you have people that you work with that come in to grow the company up to a certain point to sell it, and then just do this on a regular basis?
We do. It's actually really interesting. So this demographic shift, you mentioned the baby boomers, is so like, I'm kind of like a economics and history nerd too. So like I love that all these demographic shifts are happening in my market right now. But so we do have the baby boomers exiting, right? And they on average owned 1.2 businesses in their lifetime. So they were the generation, we know this from job studies too, that they start a business, they work it for 20, 30, 40 years, they retire, they're done. They're not changing careers. So traditionally, no, we haven't done a lot of those. An entrepreneur comes in, builds something, grows it, exits it, then repeats and does it again. I heard a study that only 3% of the population is successful entrepreneurs. Success meaning like they can pay their bills, right? But then if you take that 3% and break it down even further, traditionally for serial entrepreneurs, like what we're talking about, is like less than that 3%. So it's 3% by 3%. It's a really small market.
Oh,
But the
wow.
interesting thing, Armando, is Gen X and millennials are totally different. And we've seen like I'm a millennial, so like we got like all the, the negative stuff about millennials not staying in jobs and job hopping, right? What's the same with businesses? So Gen X is predicted to own an average of 6 businesses throughout their lifetime. If we look at that entrepreneurial segment, and
Wow.
millennials are predicted to own 8. So it's about to shift this entire industry, right? Because now it's not a transactional relationship with one client that's going to sell one business in their lifetime. Now it's more about like how do you build a long sustaining relationship with someone who's going to do this as their career. They're going
That's
to
awesome.
start, build, and grow businesses and exit them.
How do you get involved in, how do you start doing that? What are the steps that you need to do that?
To help them build and grow, or to do the serial entrepreneur thing.
Do the serial entrepreneur thing. I'm super interested in that. I was like, I thought about real estate investing and I'm just like, just not, just don't, I don't care about that. That doesn't like drive me, or I'm not super passionate about it. But I am passionate about business. I am passionate about growing and, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And like selling and keeping things fresh. I mean, I guess that's the visionary in me, right? And most
Yeah,
CEOs and entrepreneurs are those visionaries that like have the shiny object syndrome, get super excited about something, and then they want to do something else, right?
right.
So it's
Yeah,
scratching that itch.
I know. So I kind of describe entrepreneurship that there's 3 phases of entrepreneurship, right? You have the startup phase, you have the growth phase, and then you have the exit phase. And I think my spin on it is the exit is a phase, not an event. And in each of those phases, you run businesses very differently. And I think different types of entrepreneurs thrive in each of those phases, right? So
Hmm.
there's some entrepreneurs that are very like I think a lot of them are visionary across the board, but they're very like big creators and idea heavy, right? They're starters and they thrive in startup. Then you have like the perfectors that are in the middle with the growth, right? They're making the operational tweaks or figuring out how to scale sales, things like that. And then I think the exit phase, what I've seen is those entrepreneurs are strategists, right? Because they've got to look back across the previous phases and see like, how do I leverage each of these phases so I end up in the exit phase at the best possible size and scale? And I see a lot of those entrepreneurs actually don't do the startup, right? So they'll buy a business that they see has some type of good operational efficiency in that perfecting phase, right? And then they come in with their strategy to optimize it so they can, basically it's like a fix and flip if you're going to like equate it to real estate. So the people I've worked with that do those, that's typically what I see is they search for that underperforming business asset, have a team in place to make sure it perfect it, and then put the exit strategy around.
I love that. I love that. That's really cool. That's really interesting to me. And we'll talk offline more about that because I'm super interested in how to navigate those waters. Because I'm always, like I said, looking for more things. So you work, I know you work with a lot of business owners from 1 million to about what, 30, you said?
Correct. Yes,
But you're also sort of hand in hand speaking with financial advisors. Are you a SEPA?
I am a SEPA.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
so are financial advisors SEPAs or not
Yeah.
all SEPAs?
So some financial planners are SEPAs and some SEPAs are financial planners. The SEPA, for those who aren't familiar, it's the Certified Exit Planning Advisor. It's through the industry association called the Exit Planning Institute where we met. But the SEPA is really designed to give a good overall background on that exit phase, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we get into the exit phase, you do have different advisors that help throughout the process. And I kind of break it down like there's a personal track that you have through that exit phase, and then there's the business track, right? So the personal track is, I mean, a lot of people go to like the tax preparation, right? Because you're going to have hopefully a very big taxable event at the end of the exit phase. And that's really like where the financial planners, the accountants, like they sit in helping that. So we work with a lot of those professionals hand in hand because that's not my zone of genius. That's not what I thrive at, right? I need somebody on my team to help my client, but that's not where I thrive at. And then on the business side, typically you have I call like a value growth advisor, which is ourselves, where we're assessing the business value, and then our job is to grow it over time. We're typically strategists, and then we'll bring in like functional experts as needed. So if the marketing's off, like I just had a meeting with one of our partners that does reputation damage control, right? So if there's something like that, we'll bring in functional partners to help along that way. And then ultimately, when you get to the exit event, you're going to pass it off to another set of advisors who are going to execute the sale, a broker, an investment banker, things like that. So that's kind of like our world of the professionals that we work with. But it's exit planning is definitely a team sport, right? And the best advisors really have that zone of genius and stay in that zone of genius and have a really good core team built around them for those functional expertise.
How important is marketing when you have these clients that are like looking to grow their business in about 5 years? How important is marketing in that step?
It's super important. I mean, so when we first look at, like, when we start an exit plan or exit strategy for somebody on the value growth side, the first thing we try and eliminate is deal killers. So the goal is that, another scary stat is about 83, I think it's 83% of businesses that try and exit do not in the US, right? So,
Wow.
yeah, yes, it's crazy. So I was just making sure I did the stats right in my head because I reversed the number. I usually say how many are successful. But so our first job is to eliminate things that will kill the deal or that make the business unsellable. Even sometimes there's other types of exits, right? Where you can pass it on to your kids or you can sell it to your employees. And sometimes you can't even do that. And marketing plays a huge role in that. So like I brought up reputation. I think we went from a society that mystery shops by walking into a store to a society that mystery shops online, right? So it doesn't matter what business you're in, your online presence is so important. And I think a lot of people just go straight to like, oh, well, I have great reviews, right? But beyond that, what else does your web presence look like? What does your personal presence look like? Like I've had deals go south because of business owners' personal presence online and how that is reflective of the business, right?
Oh,
So, right then and there, it's a huge component that can prevent an exit. And then, obviously, if we're trying to grow value, right? So, we take clients through, a 5-stage process. The first stage we talked about was the expectations and the goal. Second stage is eliminating deal killers and financials. Third stage is operational efficiency, but fourth stage is growth, right? Because there comes a point where you can only optimize efficiency in the existing business so much. You have to grow to achieve your goals. And then marketing is huge in that. Marketing and sales like play hand in hand, like and you have to have a great marketing strategy that produces a high ROI. So I know the podcast is called, Spaghetti on the Wall, but we all know that that's not a great strategy for marketing, right? It has to be more
right.
strategic. So
100%.
that's the other component. So marketing can prevent a sale from ever happening. And then it can also, on the positive side, grow your valuation if you have the right strategy in place.
That's awesome. And so when you are are you creating the operational efficiencies as well? Like, are you helping with that? Are you
Yes.
using
And you,
EOS or anything?
We don't use EOS. We have a proprietary system. I know EOS has been really popular in the past. I've used EOS personally in the past, but I think EOS, if again we go back to those 3 phases, EOS does really well in startup and growth phase. But there's some key components that are 100% necessary that get missed in the exit phase, right? If we go back to like our operational efficiencies, there's a lot of different things we can look at, but baseline where we start is like, where is the linchpin in the organization? And typically it doesn't matter if the company is 1 million or 30 million, the linchpin's the owner, right? And they're holding up some type of process or growth from the organization. One of my mentors told me once that a business can only grow as much as the owner can grow. And a lot of times the owner will tap out and have less growth available to them personally than the business still has available. So that's where like the focus is. And then, once we solve some of those linchpin issues with the owners, then we can look at the organizational structure and are the OpEx dollars being used efficiently, if the staffing structure is correct. Like, you can dive a little bit deeper and pull the onion back a little bit more.
Are there I'm sure you have like sort of a checklist of things that you're all like, I'm just definitely not gonna roll into this. Can you tell me a little about it? Maybe you can tell me some things where you're just like, about a business, you're just like, I'm really not gonna waste my time on this particular project.
Yeah, the first thing is that if the owner's not willing to invest energy into changing the business, right? I think that's where we see probably the most resistance. There's like a lot of, functional things in a business that we can overcome. But if an owner's burnt out, they're done, they're not willing to change, we can't do anything, right?
Right.
So I'll typically tell that owner, I'll say, like, I respect where you're coming from, but with all due respect, like, your business is worth the most it's ever going to be today. Because if you're not working on improving your business, it's going to decline over time. And I've seen that hundreds of times in my career. So
And it's
that's the
hard,
first
right?
one. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard, isn't
It
it,
is
at the
hard.
end? Because you're like, you're wanting to get out, you're burnt out, and then you come in, and you're all like, all right, so now what you're gonna do is you're gonna think about growth, and they're like, I don't want to do that.
And you know what? I've been there. Like my wine store, I was there. I was totally burnt out. So we were dealing in luxury wine. We worked with wine collectors, and we shipped wine across three continents. So in Asia, North America, and Europe. And we had clients on three continents, time zones, plus a retail store. Like, I was done, like,
Right.
just done. So I went on a ski trip with my husband, and like, I sat down like after skiing out one day. I'm like, we're selling the business tomorrow. Like, I just don't have an ounce of energy left. And I get it. And a lot of owners are in that place. And what I would say to someone that's in that place is, it's okay, but you got to get rid of it, right? Because if you really hit burnout, it's incredibly hard. I think any one of us who've been through true burnout, not just like a temporary period of fatigue or exhaustion, but true burnout, it's really hard to recover from. And I think if we take care of ourselves personally as entrepreneurs, the best thing to do is to get out of that business, give ourselves a mental break. And then you can always go back into the same industry once your non-compete burns off, or go back and work for the owner that sold it, or get into something else. Like we just said, like, people our age are going to own 6 to 8 businesses, right? So you're not tied to this one, but
So
it
you're
is
saying
hard.
if you're at that point, you should just go ahead and sell it if you can.
Just do it. Yeah, it's not going to be for as much as you want, probably. It's not going to be the exact deal structure you want. A lot of people don't want to carry seller notes, although seller notes right now get like a 10 to 12% interest, so I think that's a pretty good deal. But it's not going to be the price you probably want. It's not going to be the structure you probably want. But if we go back to that, you've no energy left. Like, it's not getting better, right? So
Right.
take what you can, take that earnings that you get out of that, and then reinvest it into something new when you feel ready, that you feel a better drive for. So,
Yeah. No, I love that
yeah,
idea. I
yeah.
interrupted you, but you were
Oh,
talking to
that's
me
fine.
about you were talking to me about sort of what you look out for and things that you sort of go, I'm just going to pass on this. So if somebody's not willing to change, is one.
Yep. And the other one, it's willingness to change, but it's around financials, right? So most entrepreneurs know the tax game. The less money we make, the less we have to pay in taxes, right? And I've actually seen this get better with the generation shifts that we have going on. So I have some hope in the future that it's going to dissipate a little bit. But if someone's not willing to report cash in their business and they're pocketing cash, right? If someone's not willing to write everything off in their business, from their trips to Cabo to their Lamborghini driving lessons, to their uniforms. Like, if they're not willing, again, it goes back to making that change, but if they're not willing to get to a clean financial piece, it's again a situation we can't help. When you go to exit, the majority of whoever takes over the business is going to need some sort of financing. So beyond what Jess says, beyond what the buyers say, beyond what the new owner says, like we have to get through a lending process with underwriters. And if anyone's ever gone to a bank for a business loan before, they know that's like, not a fun process, right?
Yep.
And we have to have clean financials. Otherwise, we go back to that, 83% that are just not sellable. Financials will kill most deals. So willingness to change, but both on the operations and then to have clean financial reporting records.
Why are we seeing so many children of these businesses not wanting to follow in the father and mother's footsteps?
It's such a good question. Um, so I have a lot of friends that have passed up on family owned businesses and some really big family owned businesses. We won't talk about them because they follow me on social, so they'll probably know their story. And then I have some friends that are stepping into really well run businesses. So one of my business partners owns United Franchise Group, and he's got three boys and three nephews that are stepping into the business. My brother-in-law works for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Rooney family, I think, is on their fourth generation of owning the business.
Wow.
And when I look at, the Steelers and UFG and what they've done really successfully versus my friends that didn't make that transition, it really, honestly, it just comes down to communication, right? So communication is a pressure, right? I know both on the successful sides, those second generations were never pressured to continue the family business, but there was an open dialogue and conversation since they were very young, not like five, but like working age, right? And then the other thing I've seen is that they come into the business at a very early age to work in the business, starting from the bottom up, not just to prove like loyalty to the team and the transition, but to see if they like it, if they understand it, if they enjoy it,
Right.
right? Versus the other side, I see that that conversation doesn't happen to the end, right? So like Armando would be like me waiting till my son's 30 and I'm ready to retire, and we've never talked about him owning my company before, and be like, hey, Bricks, it's your turn. You got to take it over. And he's never really had a leadership role in there. He's never learned the business. And it's scary, right? And they're like, well,
Yeah.
I'm already set. I have a career, that. And that's my personal opinion. I haven't seen any stats around the reasons why, but from my personal experience, that's really just the biggest difference.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. I love what you talked about in terms of burnout and why I think business owners should be really thinking about the exit strategy, even when they're starting, even in startup, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is the exit strategy? I don't even think, and the thing is, like, as I'm learning more about this whole industry, I hadn't even thought of the exit, right? I'm thinking about it now, right? I'm thinking about it. Okay, what do I got to do? Because to your point, right? Like if everything has to be through me and I have to make the decisions, it's not a sellable business because then I'm attached to it.
Mm-mm.
So I have to be here, right? But if I can create processes and procedures and empower the team to make the decisions and eventually step into the CEO role, which I'm very close to being able to do like completely, which is incredible, and even, I mean,
It's a
even
great
now
feeling.
I'm almost a nuisance to the business when I'm like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, hey, just head on over there. Right. Like we got this.
Yeah.
And be like, all right, awesome. Like I went to, I went to Europe, a couple of weeks ago and, nobody bothered me and things rolled and there were no issues. As a matter of fact, we grew and was like, all right, cool. So, so yeah, but I will tell
Yeah.
you, had I not gone to the Exit Planning Institute and like
Mm-hmm.
listened and just kind of been involved in this whole industry or just listening to this industry, I would not have had I would say courage, but courage comes from not knowing so much, right? Like the unknown and then doing it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I'm aware now that like I have to make those decisions. So is that really courage or is that just being smart and going, hey, these guys, they may not be at that level, but if I keep empowering them and they make mistakes, but they're okay with making those mistakes and they're learning from those mistakes, then I can continue to empower my leaders. And as I do that, I become less and less important to the business.
Yeah. I mean, it's such an important topic. And I'd say like the two words that popped in my mind, Armando, when you're talking is there is courage, right? But I think it's really awareness and wisdom, right? So, I don't think any entrepreneur has figured this out yet. Maybe Elon Musk has, but like there's not infinite longevity in this world, right?
Right.
So I joke all this time, like none of us are getting out of the business alive, right? You know, we're getting out of the business alive, I should say. No, I'm just getting out of life alive.
Right.
So we will exit, right? And when I look at the data of all those, deals that we've sold across my career, so we track why people sell, right? Is it because of burnout? Is it because of a health issue? Is it because it was the strategic plan, right? And the data shows us that 95% is not because of a strategic plan. It's because of a personal life event. Burnout, health, spouse gets an opportunity. The business owner decides they don't like the business. I saw a great quote today on Instagram, and it was like, courage isn't, about sticking it out. It's about being able to walk in a door and recognize that you're in the wrong room, right? That sometimes we make a choice that's not right for us. And instead of just sticking it out and forcing it, say, you know what? This business was not the right fit for me. I want to part ways and try something else. But those are the reasons people exit. So I think instead of thinking, again, if we go back to exit strategy is not an end event, it's really having the option to exit your business for a healthy sum at any given time, no matter what happens, right? And we'll probably move that target and move that plan year by year in strategic planning, right? But if you don't have the option, then that's when those negative events can happen, like we talked about.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. I really appreciate you being here. Tell the people how they can reach you if they need your help.
Yeah. So I was so happy to do this with you. First of all, this is a great conversation. You can find me at our website, which is www.exitfactor.com. I'm also most active on LinkedIn or Instagram. And you just search Jessica Fialkovich, even if you spell the name wrong, I usually come up. There's only one of me in the world. So
that's awesome. Cool. Yeah, guys, if you are in business and you guys are thinking about, or you should be thinking about what the exit strategy is, get together with Jessica. She's a SEPA. She understands the business, super knowledgeable, and at least get the information that you need and start the plan. I think starting the plan is important, right? And understanding where you are and where you need to be, right?
Yes, so, essential.
All right. Jessica, thank you so much, and we're going to see you next time.
Thank you.
And that was Spaghetti on the Wall, brought to you by Leduc Entertainment. For all of your digital marketing needs, podcasting, social media, we got you. Keep listening, keep watching. We'll see y'all next time.